Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I want to thank you guys so much for clicking on my first video. It means a lot if you watch that, if you showed support, left a like, subscribed. And today we're going to get into 11 to 22, which I call the puberty stage of Survivor because it's the stage where survivors try new things, especially in towards the end of Palau. They were trying new things with Exile. They were trying, and then in Guatemala, the Idol, season 12, Exile, a full on Exile. Season 13, Final Three. Season 14, Diverse Cast. Season 15, um, Idols. Like the idols become like regular. Season 16, Returnees. Season 17, Gabon being crazy. Season 18, again, Exile and just casting crazy people like Coach and Tyson. Um, 19, Russell Hantz. And then 20, obviously, the best season up until, I mean, it's definitely an S tier season, put it that way. What's it called? But we'll get to that later. So I'm going to start with Guatemala first. Um, Tell me while I sort my logos. Tell me what you think about these seasons in the comments or the live chat if you're watching this while it's premiering. Which if you're watching it while it's premiering, thank you so much. It means a lot. I'll be in the chat talking to you guys. If you want to talk about your rankings, I can give you my personal insight if you have any questions and stuff like that. But just thank you guys so much for any support you show on the channel. It means the world to me. Trust me. Trust me. All right. So now that I have my stuff in order, let's start with Guatemala. So I actually just finished up a Guatemala rematch, rewatch. Jesus Christ. And coming out of it, I'm going back to the first time I watched it, where I love Rafe, I love Stephanie. Danny is such an underrated winner, and I'm so it's unfortunate that her game on Winners at War was not as good as it was, because it could have been so much better, because she was such a adaptive player in Guatemala, and she was able to work from the bottom. And aside from Vesepia, she was in Vesepia and probably Chris. She was one of the first winners to do that. Successfully, to work from the bottom, to come in without numbers and just have the majority alliance pick itself off. And she took the person who she needed to beat to the end. Me, being Stephanie. I think overall this season, the pre-merge is I'd say the pre-merge is about an A, um, A minus, B plus. I like the pre-merge. It's just old school pre-merges can get really really like sloggy at times, because people, like in old school, you're lucky if you get a season like Pearl Islands, where people are playing in post-merge, but you just don't see people playing pre-merge in old school seasons. So it's it's one of those things where the pre-merge is watchable, and the post merge is fantastic in my opinion. I think the post merge makes the season, specifically the Jamie blindside, Judd blindside, and what's it called, and the Gary idol play episode. Again, you have a first idol here, so this is Survivor testing out new things. Creating new adding the idol, adding different islands, with next season. So I think Guatemala overall is a great watch, and I think that it's worth watching. It's not unwatchable by any means, and I think it's probably going to end up going in front of Palau for me, because with Palau, the pre merge is meh, and the post merge is pretty good, and then like the last two episodes are golden, whereas in Guatemala it's just like, in fact, I have to put it behind Palau, just because the Palau's last two episodes are fantastic. Um, and Guatemala, the thing that the cons that I think for Guatemala honestly just comes down to, there's no like seriously memorable characters. Partly because with Judd, Shane came out the next season and was just a louder, funnier version of Judd, nicer version of Judd, who just kind of replaced Judd on like the he needs to return list. And then Stephanie was not the hero that she was piped up to be. She ended up being a villain, which I like personally, but people didn't like that. And Rafe was like a really cool dude. So like if your season just like only has Rafe, you kind of have a serious problem. But what saves it is the fact that people are playing so hard in this post merge, and that makes it the season that it is. Next up, Panama. Panama, I'm in the middle of a Panama we watch right now. Panama is one of those seasons where you think the pre-merge is like, oh yeah, the pre-merge is watchable. The pre-merge is unwatchable in Panama, because the only fun parts are the parts where the Kasai tribe is on the screen. The Lamina tribe is the one of the worst tribes, entertainment wise, and also just like performance wise, in Survivor history. The only semi interesting person on there is Terry. And Blondie was kind of entertaining, but I mean, if I can't remember her name, she's probably not that entertaining. You know what I mean? Um, I think Terry isn't even that entertaining. He doesn't give good confessionals, and he tries to do like oh, I'm not playing the game. I'm kind of playing the game, but like kind of not, and like whatever thing, and that really does not work. So I think in the end, Terry needs to just like chill. Um, Terry needs to give us more in confessional, and that Lamina tribe could be a lot more entertaining overall. And when we move on to Panama, we have or no, what am I talking about? Panama ranking. I would put Panama. It's going behind Palau and Guatemala. It probably goes behind Vanuatu, but it's still in front of Africa. So that's right. Where I put Panama. Panama is like your quintessential average season. It's not like great, but it's also not like completely poor. And it has, Suri, it has Shane, it has the Kasaya Six being crazy. Bruce is actually a very underrated character. You have all these people who are actually good characters, and that's what saves it because the Mina tribe is so poor that it's actually sad. Cook Islands. Moving on. Cook Islands. It's a very top heavy cast. You have Yule, Ozzy, Parvati, even Candace. Penner. And then like you have those five, and then some underrated characters like Nate and Cowboy. So what is that? Seven. The other 13 people are so uninteresting that it's like it makes me laugh watching it. T- did you know that there was someone named um, Stephanie on this season? Because I didn't. Like I just now I was doing research for this video and I was going back and looking at the boot order, and I didn't know there was someone named Stephanie. I didn't know there was someone named Brad. I didn't know there was someone named all these names, Jessica. Like it's such a top heavy cast, but the top heavy part of it is so good, and that's what keeps it being at the top. Also, the final the final three was the definitely the most competitive, probably up until I think this is probably the most competitive final anything, just three or two ever because of the fact that Ozzy was so dominant physically and Yule so dominant strategically, and we were in a time where Survivor was like transitioning from physical dominance being important to like strategical dominance being important, and so we were transitioning from that from physical to strategical, and this really set the tone for how you need to play the game if you want to win, which is not physical, it's strategical, also physical, but definitely more importantly strategical. And you'll winning really prove that you can play physical all you want, but if you don't have a strategical game, you can't win. Period. Uh, yeah. Moving on. So I'm gonna put Cook Islands at the top of C tier, above All Stars, and Australian Outback, but it's definitely below Africa, I'd say, for a rewatch. Fiji. Fiji is going to be bottom C tier. I know a lot of people think Fiji's in D tier. I really don't believe that. I think, in fact, it's going to go ahead of Australian Outback. I think Fiji. The one thing Fiji has going for it is that is the what is his name, Eduardo boot. That boot is like I was like just staring at my wall because the season is so boring, and then all of a sudden, like I get to that like post challenge pre tribal council on the beach segment where like she's like, okay, well, how about we just do a safe vote? And I was like, oh my god, they're actually playing the game for the first time in the entire season. So it's that vote's great. And then you have Yaman and Earl. That's it. like if I had a camera, you could see my shoulders shrugging because there's nothing else. The have versus have not twist doesn't work. Although I don't think it's as bad as other people think it is. I like what it brought to the season. I just thought it could have been done better. And if you're going to do that, then you shouldn't have then you should not have swapped at all. If you're going to do the have versus have not. Um, I think overall the car curse saves this season from like being nothing. that in the Eduardo boot. Um, and like Cook Islands is top heavy. This season is like top heavy, but there's only two. Whereas at least Cook Islands has like five. You know what I mean? So that's why this season is below Cook Islands, but still not at Thailand levels. Survivor China. So a lot of people think China's an S tier season. Personally, I think it's a great season, but I do think it's an A tier season. I'll explain why. I think the difference between an S tier season is I can go like I when showing my friends the seasons, I can say this is like Survivor. Like this is the season that I want everyone to see. And China is a great season. I do not think it's at, Per Islands, HVV. I'm not going to, give spoilers on the other ones, but the obvious top tier seasons. I think China's a great season. I don't think it's a legendary season. And for that reason, I put it in A. It has um, James, it has Todd, it has Amanda, and it has a very like non-top heavy cast. Like the entire cast is just everyone. It's very similar to Australian Outback. Everyone is not a dud. No one's a dud in the season. Everybody works in does their role perfectly. Courtney, yeah, I forgot to mention her. Jean Robert and her rivalry is amazing to watch. It's all great. The John Robert blindside, the James blindside, the weird tribe swap that happened is very entertaining to watch. The Todd's final tribal council. Todd as a character is very underrated, and the fact that we haven't seen Todd come back is absolute travesty to me. But besides that, there are some stretches in the game where it does get pretty boring. Specifically, the last two votes before the finale. I believe it's PG and Denise. It could be someone else, but correct me if I'm not right. If I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's PG and Denise. Where those are pretty obvious boots. And on top of that, the swap was so unfair that some of the votes in the swap were just people throwing the challenge to get the other tribes players stolen on their team, and so that they could vote them out, which just wasn't fair. And yeah, I think the location was good. I would have wished that they could got a like that they could have found a place where there was a beach because I personally like the beach seasons more. But I can also understand why they had to do inland. So that's where China ends up at at letter A at the top of it too. It's above Marquesas, but it's not nearly at Pro Islands level yet. Micronesia fans versus favorites. This is going to be our second S tier. Lately, people have been shitting on this season. I don't know why. This season's a great season. People, the only talking point that I've heard against the season, it's been on the Reddit. It's been like very adamant that people do not like this season because of the late pre-merge. And to that, I say, watching Chet be awful at just Survivor, but just like being a Survivor player, quitting before Tracy can blindside Ozzy. Tracy Wolf's, whatever her last name is, amazing player, amazing, probably a top 5 pre-merge boot of all time. She plays the game so hard, and if it weren't for Chet being awful, we could have actually seen her like blindside Ozzy before his actual big iconic blindside. I do. I forget what the dude's name is, but it's this big dude with tattoos, black hair. Yeah, but he is so fun to watch. In the first 4 episodes, he blindsides Mikey B, I think, and his girlfriend. And it's so fun to watch him play so hard. But then Tracy plays even harder and blindsides him. And then from the merge to the Eric boot, it's quite literally the 4 or 5 best episode, the best 100% best episode stretch in the entirety of the series. You have Eliza, it's a fucking steak. You have the Ozzy blindside. Do I even have to start talking? Jason, they just fool this kid into just making dumb decision after dumb decision after dumb decision, and he keeps making them. And he thinks he has an idol, and they blindside him anyway. Then you have, I think at this point you're at the what? You're at the idle play that Amanda does. You know what I mean? To knock out this girl. I don't. She's so forgettable, but yeah, to knock out girl with the blue hat. And on top of that, and then to cap it off, you have Eric giving up immunity, which is one of the most talked about moments in Survivor history. And then the finale. I think the only thing for me that brings the season down is like behind Pro Islands is the fact that there isn't final three, because this would have been probably the most contested um, final three of all time, because it probably would have ended up with Sari winning, but she would have won 3-2 to 2, which would have been so entertaining to watch personally. And so that's what keeps it behind Pro Islands for me. Moving on to Gabon. Gabon, it's very polarizing. Everyone says, Gabon is Gabon's an A tier season. Gabon's, a D tier season. For me, Gabon is going to go above Africa, above Panama, below Vanuatu. For me, people always talk about Panama being like the quintessential average season of Survivor. Gabon's pretty average to me. I know everyone says it's like a crazy season, and really people don't realize the craziness comes from one person, and that's Sugar. Sugar flips this whole season and makes it fun. If it weren't for Sugar, it would just be Randy and Corinne bullying people, which wouldn't have been very fun to watch. I think that there's not much to say for the season that the season doesn't say for itself. It's a very crazy season, and it's not heavy on gameplay, but it's heavy enough, and there's a pretty good cast as well. Also, Ace in the pre-merge is fantastic as well, and that saves the pre-merge from being god awful. Token Chains. I don't really see the hype around Token Chains. Like as like an S tier season. I understand that it's obviously an A tier season. By the way, I'm gonna move Borneo down behind Palau for me. But what's it called? Token Chains for me. It's a really good season. It's in the A tier. It's not at Marquesas, China, Micronesia, Prions like levels for me, and it's because of the lack of competition that JT and Steven face in the merge. Everyone just flips on everyone. Everyone's talking about how it's a great comeback, but really, the comeback was cut out for them immediately. From the start. On top of that, the pre-merge is not good enough, and that's really honestly the main thing that keeps the season from being at like the top of A tier is the pre-merge being not that great. Moving on to Samoa. This season is, I mean, it's poorly edited in the way that if you don't like Russell Hantz, you're going to hate the season. I know everyone says it's just like flat out poorly edited. I don't think that's the case. I think it's poorly edited if you don't like Russell Hantz. Personally, I love Russell Hantz. I love seeing his pros and his flaws. And for me, that's why Samoa is going to go ahead of China. I know it's kind of a hot take. I know people don't like Samoa on YouTube and Reddit. You know, I think Samoa is a great season because it just shows someone on a different level. And but the rest of the people in the season are also bearable. It's like how All Stars with Boston Rob, it shows Boston Rob is just on a different level. You know, this season is like that, except the people around Boston Rob aren't god awful people, and it's not dark and just not fun to watch. It's actually fun to watch episodes, especially when at the start of the merge when it's literally 8-4 and Russell is playing so much harder than anyone else on that island. It's so fun to watch. And then to watch him, get to final three and think he won the game so much, and then he loses the game. Probably one of the best reunions of the show, behind Heroes versus Villains reunion with Russell saying that he wants to buy the title of Survivor off of Natalie for $10,000 or whatever. It's just so entertaining to watch Russell play before he gets toxic in Heroes versus Villains, and that's what brings the season to the top of the A tier for me. I think it's just a fantastic watch strategically. I think it's the exact opposite of Token Chains. Really, there's less characters but more strategy, and it all comes from Russell. Finishing off, Heroes versus Villains. I think the season, obviously it has to be S tier, but I honestly think it's at the bottom of the S tier. I think this season has issues as far as everything after the JT boot, but hold on, yeah, after the JT boot, but before the Danielle boot. So that period where there's just kind of a pagonging of Candace and Amanda, it's very very not fun Survivor to watch for me personally. And the finale just it's kind of lacking. I'm not gonna lie, this finale is pretty poor as far as entertainment value. From this season gets all the way to S tier just off of its pre-merge because it's so good. You have Sugar, probably the weakest vote of the pre-merge is the first vote, but then you have Stephanie yelling at James and them arguing her way out of tribal council. Then you have Randy throwing his buff in the fire, hilarious, and them the alliances are starting to form. and then you have throughout the pre-merge the whole James broken leg, should we keep him conundrum. We have the Tyson vote, fantastic television, which ended up probably working for the better, because if Boston Rob had won that vote, he probably would have voted out Russell, and then would have voted out Danielle, and then he would have probably ended up just dominating the season again, which wouldn't have been very fun to watch. So I think it worked out for the better. Although I think this post merge was doomed anyway, because you did have like kind of what you had in Redemption now in South Pacific, where you have two solid teams of 6 or 5, and then they go at each other. It's a great merge. And then after that, it's just a belonging. And that's basically what happens here. The only thing that saves this post merge is Russell blindsiding Danielle, which kind of kicks the season back and kind of like wakes it up again, which makes it good again for me. I think it's an S tier season just off of the pre-merge and the merge and the Danielle blindside. But I think what brings it to the bottom of the S tier is all the other episodes past the merge. And that's my 11 to 20 rankings, guys. If you want to see me do 21 to 30, just let me know. I'm happy and very willing to do so. If we can get to 10 likes, that'd be awesome. 10 likes would be fantastic. And if you're in the chat, talk to me. What's your favorite season out of the 11 to 20 bracket? And I should be able to drop 21 to 30 tomorrow, if that's possible. And this should be premiering at 8 tonight. That's when I'm going to schedule it. So yeah, if you have any suggestions for my audio quality or something like that you think I should fix, or things that I say that you don't like, just like pointers, any advice, that would be awesome. And once again, thanks for watching.